Hey everyone, it's LS, and this is going to be the patch 7.17 rundown. I haven't looked at the patch at all, but I've been told, and, well, shouldn't say I haven't looked at it at all, but apparently it's a very small patch, and so there's probably not going to be anything too exciting. And we'll probably end up talking about what is missing inside of the patch. I really hope that the Worlds patch is going to be exciting regardless, so let's just go ahead. We're not going to really talk about Ornn. I don't know what to think of him. I don't know his numbers or his stats or anything yet, so I'm not going to comment on him. And unfortunately, he's going to be disabled for Worlds, so that sucks. Okay, Draven. Passive grants less base gold. Draven loses more stacks on death. Now, this to me is a hilarious fucking nerf, and the reason that I think that it's hilarious is because someone lost again in silver. Because, you know, what is proper laning. But, Draven, I saw a comment, I believe, on rlol, and they commented on how Draven doesn't really get seen in Korea. And let's talk about Draven's passive for a second. Let's talk about passive League of Draven. If Twisted Fate had a very stupid adopted stepbrother of a passive, it would be Draven's. Not only is it worse than Twisted Fates in almost every single possible way, it's basically fucking terrible, because never can you always guarantee that a champion is going to get the kill. Not only that, but it has a side quest which most people at low MMR can't even fucking complete. And it's really just a novelty, and with the way that the game is right now, it helps accelerate him, but unless he's getting, like, ridiculously fed, it's not really helping accelerate him at all, and then Draven ends up having a less useful passive than Wukong and Shyvana, and that's saying something because Wukong's an atrocious fucking champion. But anyways, League of Draven sucks. The nerfs are completely unwarranted. It doesn't make any sense why a champion gets hit because he's popular in one region. I think the comment that I read earlier was from Cowsep, and it was basically in regards to how champions can be popular on one server but not actually see play in another server. And I think that the argument that is made regarding that is that the Korean and Ionian server generally tends to play meta, and they generally tend to play the most popular champions, and they try to take the game very serious. But champion or style can't really flourish or exist there. One might suggest that it is balanced. And rather than catering to the Care Bear regions, you know, that bitch, piss, and moan about anything that requires them to actually be a little bit more competent at the game that they're playing, let's instead just constantly add changes and play around that, because, you know, what is forcing players to get better? So, for instance, Master Yi in Korea, there were very few challengers that were able to play him in jungle, mid, and even top. I believe that there was a guy that played him all three. But for the most part, the champion gets shut down, and the players play around him very well. They coordinate well inside of team fighting. However, in NA solo queue, and perhaps EU West, they're a little bit better, but in NA solo queue, the coordination is not there, and junglers do not interact with laners, and there is no such thing as proper timings on objectives or proper phases of the game. There's a lot of arbitrary decisions that are made, and so champions like Master Yi were apparently, according to Cowsep's post, permabanned, or not allowed to see the light of day, or they were picked very frequently. Something that's interesting to me is if we're going to talk about things that are extremely prevalent at lower MMR, and we want to talk about elo boosting tactics, we can talk about the Master Yi Kayle elo boosting tactic, where apparently it wreaks havoc on lower MMRs, and I've even seen it as high as Diamond on NA and Europe. And I've heard murmurs of it, even higher than that, being used sometimes, and yet that shit would never fly in South Korea. So, one might, you know, suggest that perhaps it's actually terrible, and rather than nerfing it or, you know, forcing a champion that exists inside of it out, you know, we just let it basically go until players get better and learn how to actually do things. So, that's all I'm going to say about Draven. Now let's go on to Ezreal. Q ratio increased. Q Mystic Shot, 1.25 attack damage from 1.1. Fantastic. So it does nothing to fix Ezreal's atrocious itemization, how long it takes him to wind up, and how late of a wake-up he has inside of the game in general. does nothing to really aid him in the current meta. He doesn't really fit in the current meta because of the other champions that have nothing to do with him existing in the support, jungle, and top roles, for instance. And so this is an absolutely fantastic buff that is going to do basically nothing. However, it might be a placebo buff, and so people might actually start playing Ezreal again because they get bored with the current trends that exist in the AD carry position. So that's pretty much it about Ezreal. Hecarim, E no longer ticks down during its charge. Our fear duration now scales with distance traveled. That's great. Hecarim's still quite bad, but yet again, perhaps a placebo buff. Okay. Alright, Leona. Passive mark expires faster but deals more damage when proc. Q cooldown decreased at earlier ranks, increased at rank 5. I don't believe that Leona can proc Ardent Censer unless she has, Bond of Stone. So in that regard, no one cares about Leona. And it's convenient that I do believe that a solar eclipse happened not so recently because this fucking bitch is eclipsed as well. And yeah, she's still a terrible champion, so we're just going to move on from that. Maokai, passive can no... Oh, that's the death of him, for sure. Passive Sap Magic can no longer proc when Maokai attacks a ward. Alright, well, see you later, Maokai, you know what I'm saying? Oh, wait. That's actually not how that works. If he doesn't get touched in 7.18, okay, you know that they're trying to sell skins. Urgot, our slow duration reactivation window increased. W lockout after failing to hit a champion with E reduced. W lockout on debuff now refreshes with W hits. I'm going to go out here and be completely honest and say I know fuck all about Urgot other than the times that I've seen him. He seems like a ranged Pantheon, although I feel like Pantheon's actually a little bit more useful later on than Urgot is. But I say that in the sense that he seems like a very giant lane bully. He seems extremely oppressive if he gets ahead, but he seems like he falls behind, although he does have a little bit more insurance policies than a Pantheon does. But it basically looks to me like Pantheon done fucked up somewhere in his life, and he got like tied down or something, injected with some fucking Captain America type shit, and then he ends up becoming Urgot, and that's actually the lore. And he was once a baker in his former life, but unfortunately the baker becomes the baked, as, you know, Crabgot lives on. But anyways, Urgot I still think is a pretty terrible champion, so... Well, actually, I don't know enough to say if he's terrible. It could just be the players that I saw playing him were terrible, which I can say that with 100% certainty. But, I don't know. I don't know about him. I have to see him in a proper region as well, because my experience seeing him is extremely limited, so... nice changes are nice, obviously, but I can't really go too into detail on it. Zed, base attack speed increased, W shadow duration increased. Well, unfortunately, it wasn't decreased. Maybe Selfie would have lived versus GCU. But anyways, base attack speed 6.44 to 0.651. So the attack speed buff, I'm not really too sure exactly how much that does for him. Especially because a lot of his combos and just the way that the meta is right now, I don't think has him auto-attacking way too much. Living Shadow, though, increased by half a second. That is definitely going to propel Zed back into the meta with all the tanks, shields, 80 carry starting to take barrier. I love it. Absolutely fantastic buffs. I really like exactly what I'm seeing. And that is it, apparently, for the fucking champions. So, if we, if we haven't seen an abomination of a patch in recent times, we just got one right here, 7.17. I fucking love it. Now, let's move on. Oh, Ardent Censer. Attack speed buff and health drain buff decreased. Let's see how they decreased it. Attack speed buff, 20 to 30... That's about all I have to say on the change to Ardent Censer. Moving on, Gargoyle Stoneplate. Stoneplate's introduction earlier in the season. Oh, okay. Let's talk about it. Earlier in the season. Okay, bug fix. Fixed a bug with the metallicize active, for example. Oh, great. Absolutely fantastic. Is that it? Great, great, great. Honor. This is important. You just want to keep rolling into your next game. So now, if you get more honors, Alright, well, let's talk about some stuff. This is fucking laughable, okay? Now, I get it, I understand, you know, down in the depths of perhaps bronze and silver and gold and whatever else, the champions do not actually auto-attack frequently enough while the shields and heals are active and granting you Ardent Censer, but that does not mean that the item is not the embodiment of all things unholy and wrong in this world. If you need a cure for cancer, cure for AIDS, you got it right here, because neither of those two fucking things would ever approach something that has been touched by Ardent Censer. And, so anyways, these are completely laughable jokes of, nerfs. You are definitely... Now, the one thing, though, that we will say is this probably does take off about 100 damage, at some point, like late game. Okay, this probably does take off about 100 damage. Now, if the target has Rune on Hurricane, it can take off more than that inside of a team fight. But that's the way that you're looking at this. This ends up taking away basically nothing. Because let's just be honest that someone's probably not making use out of that 10% attack speed. So it's going to be basically reliant on positioning and whatever else. But yeah, let's talk about a few things. So number one, none of the tanks are apparently listed inside of the champions that have been nerfed. Instead, they feel the need to nerf Draven and give Ezreal a 0.14 total attack damage buff to his Q, because that's what's important. And who's the someone a fucking Leona main or something? Like, who cares about this fucking champion? All right, look, as long as this exists, Sonny, you're not seeing play. Okay, let's be very clear about that, unless fucking Wraith decided to, you know, unless Wraith decided that he wanted to pull her out. But there's going to be no sunlight where you're going. So, moving on from this, 7.18, I do believe, is the Worlds patch. And so that's going to be the most important patch, because hopefully a lot of shit has to change, and that needs to be a mega patch. There is a complete disregard and an absence of proper meta balancing. This is all catered towards low MMR, people that are gonna buy skins. There's some fucking guy right now in Silver 4 with fucking 1,200 games. He just fucking climaxed as he read this, and he's like, oh my god, I'm finally buying Post-Fire Ezreal. And, you know, the guy that has all the Debonair Ezreal skins, he's fapping right now. And then, you know, the Draven players down in Silver 5 with fucking who knows how many games. He's crying. He thinks Draven is terrible now. He doesn't even fucking realize that when I look up his OPGG, he has an average kill count of 0 a game, so he's not even really making use of League of Draven. Hecarim is an atrocious fucking champion, and let's not talk about him. Urgot, again, I don't know enough about. Passive Sap Mad. This is probably the most comical buff. This is probably just them letting you know that they're saying fuck you. And if something doesn't happen in patch 7.18, we're going to have some very serious problems. But, Zed buff, again, laughable. Unless perhaps a skin is coming out, who knows. Perhaps this is, you know, maybe there's going to be a skin conveniently in 7.18. But anyways, moving on from that, there's a lot of champions that haven't been touched, particularly in the support role. I think that Doran Shield is actually still creating an unhealthy meta in mid and top, and I think that item actually needs to be reassessed yet again. I think that the changes from a long time ago are starting to actually take effect in some ways with itemization changes and also the hits that some masteries took. And I think that as we draw closer to the Worlds patch, this is becoming more and more and more important. Something actually needs to be done about this. Something needs to be done about the current support and top and jungle meta. League of Tanks is really great and all, as long as it's in a healthy amount of tanks and just in terms of team fighting and compositions and stuff. And I don't think it's really at that stage. And I'm a huge advocate of League of Tanks because I think that tanks promote extended team fights. They promote you know, longevity. They promote proper team play. They promote the ability to stall out the game usually. They promote wet noodle fights. I think that tank on tank is actually more interesting inside of a split push to some degree if they're actually capable of dueling each other. I think that it promotes proper teleport usage. So there's a lot of things that I really like, but I think that right now it's in too high of an amount to really be enjoyable. And I think that the meta is sort of it's heading towards stagnation in a sense, and I think that 7.18 should help liven it up. I think that nerfs, again, just really driving really driving it home. Nerfs like this and buffs like this are, it's like sort of like why. And again, I have to reiterate that I think that if you ever actually, I do believe that a writer replied and commented that they do sometimes look at something that's very popular or underutilized inside of a region, and they look at it like there's something to work with, so that maybe there's something that can go on there. If something's really popular in a very bad region, okay, it doesn't mean it needs to be nerfed. If it can't work in a more competitive or a more intense region, then it doesn't need to be nerfed. The players need to get better, and if you cater to them and you nerf it and you go fucking full, Care Bear. Oh fuck me, dude. I think that's the diarrhea. I don't know why a burp would have to do with diarrhea, but I did just read this patch note, so I guess I got that going for me. But anyways, I don't know why you would ever constantly change something to make up for a handicap, because that's essentially what this is doing. Players should have to work to get better. They should have to learn how to beat strategies. They should have to learn. A champion should not shut down play. Now, if the champion has been shown to be poor in another region, then it's not unfair. Now, if the champion is popping up everywhere, China, Korea, NA, US, Latin America, whatever else, right? Then yes, it deserves to get nerfed, in some sense, right? It deserves to be brought down a notch. If a champion is only flourishing in one region, no. Like, that literally doesn't make any sense. Do we remember the time where Adrian or something picked Soraka every game? You didn't see that shit happening anywhere else. Just because it was working there didn't mean it was overpowered or that it was imbalanced. The players' approach to it were poor and it was suboptimal, and thus it looked like it was, it was broken, and, you didn't want to ban it, you didn't want to do this, and yada yada yada. You can't do stuff like this. This drags you down a really, really bad path, and I saw it happen in StarCraft 2, and I've seen it happen in other games, and it's just really disgusting to see stuff like this happen. Like, where the fuck is Volibear's buffs, from all those patches ago? Maybe he's gonna get reworked. I don't know, man. Anyways, patch 7.17, I think this is all pretty stupid. Neopac Sivir, that's cool. But I guess that's all I really have to say about it. I'm really hoping that 7.18 is a lot better, because this patch is laughable. 7.18 can't come fast enough. Thank you guys all for... Wait a minute.